Once you set, this is our strategy, and by that I mean this is how we position ourselves to win against the competition. So that's not a strategy, that's an execution plan that you're changing, and that can change.
Hi, welcome everybody to another episode of CEOpen Mic. Today my guest is Tony Omani. As a brief introduction, I would say if there was a position with the name product in it, you've probably held that position already. Because since I stalked you on LinkedIn, and since 2008, you were chief product officer, product manager, you put whatever. So, hi Tony, nice to have you.
Hi Bartek, pleasure to be here.
All right, so what's this story? What's your professional background? What's your story? How did you get into that position?
Growing up, I always wanted to be a software engineer, a computer programmer.
So sorry to hear.
Bit of a yeah. So really enjoyed that. Had been doing that since I was young. So did a degree in computer science and took up a software development position. But back when I started software development, there wasn't really a product management role. And in smaller companies especially, the product management sort of activities were taken care of by the software engineer who could speak to people. So essentially, because I was decent at interacting with people and, I guess more outgoing than average, then often I was sort of wheeled out to talk to customers in B2B situations and to sort of understand their needs or elicit requirements as we know it now. But I soon kind of realized that I really enjoyed the people element, actually. And I was able to affect more change through dealing with people. So yeah, I started doing product management. It wasn't called product management then, but I started doing it back when I worked in telecoms, and I never really looked back. I really enjoyed it. So you're right. I held all of the roles that have the word product in them: product owner, product manager, head of product, VP products. Yeah, CPO for a while now. But yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God. So right now you're holding the position of, I'm reading, Chief Product Officer at Casumo.
Yes.
So on that, I can imagine that's a very high level position right now. So is it in any way connected to actual product management as we understand it right now in a software development process, or is it just a name?
Yes, it is connected in that I'm accountable for that as one of my direct reports is the head of product, and she looks after product management, kind of standard product management. Another one would be head of product design, and he looks after the kind of UI UX user research end of things. So I do have other reports, more operational reports as well, for sure, but it is connected, and I work very closely with our CTO, Christina, for example, and on delivering solutions. But the primary function, I think, for product management these days is to find and validate opportunities and good problems to solve, essentially valuable problems to solve for the company. That's the currency for product management, and that's more where they add value, in my opinion, at least. Of course, there are lots of elements to product management, but yeah, that's the key value added by product management function.
All right. And would you say that your experience as a software developer nowadays, does it play any role, or is it just,
Yeah, it does. It really does. I mean, when I moved from software development into product management, I was a product manager for digital products. I wasn't a product manager for Coca-Cola. It makes a big difference if you can talk tech with tech people, and it made a big difference to me when I kind of transitioned into product management. I was learning how to talk to other functions, but I already knew how to talk tech with techies, and that really makes a big difference because, especially in more junior positions, one of your primary functions in product management is sort of translating. You're not really going to market and finding problems to solve. You're really on the execution end of things when you're more junior. But marketeers, commercial stakeholders don't talk tech in the same way. So one of your primary functions is being able to translate the needs of an organization into something that can be developed by a delivery organization, usually software developers, QAs, that sort of thing.
Right, right, right. Okay, and where is iGaming in all that? Because when I stalked you on LinkedIn, you are in a business for quite a while now. But was it like a conscious decision that I want to go into iGaming business because for some reason you wanted it, or was it just random?
No, it's a good question. So I was working in mobile telecoms, and actually, as a hobby, a fairly reasonably serious hobby, I played poker. Um, and that's when a position came up at a company called Full Tilt Poker, who some people may remember. Um, and the position was for somebody who had experience in project management, product management, and poker.
Hmm.
And I thought to myself, well, if Carlsberg did jobs, this would be the one for me, right? So I applied and got the job and loved it, and as a consequence, I did really well. It wasn't difficult to do really well because I really really loved it. It was my passion and my professional capabilities combining. It was a real kind of big moment for me, and I was able to take on significant projects in a domain that I really loved for a brand that I really got behind. It was a lot of planets sort of aligning there, and it motivated me massively. And as a consequence, I did really well. So that compounded my success, and I was taking on really interesting product enhancements, disruptive ones in that case, actually. So I was, yeah, loved it, loved it, loved it. That's what got me into the industry.
And you stayed in the industry, right? Because you changed the jobs a couple of times since then, but it was always iGaming.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a combination of leveraging my experience to progress, as well as just enjoying the sort of betting entertainment end of things. Um, I never really had designs to, product manage software that kept people's hearts beating. I really kind of enjoy the entertainment end of things. I think there's value in it for people. I think it makes a difference day to day in people's lives, and this was an avenue that appealed to me, and one that I felt like I could make a difference in. So yeah, and I've been enjoying it.
All right. So, would you say that the following statement is valid? That if you want to be a good product owner or chief product officer, you need to enjoy the product you're creating.
It definitely helps. I don't think it's 100% required. I think it makes a big difference in your effectiveness and your motivation, perhaps. I think your motivation more so, and then your effectiveness as a consequence. Um, I think if you very much enjoy the problem space that you're working in, then you can kind of empathize with customers more easily. You can understand their problems more easily. You make decisions with customers in mind because perhaps you could be a customer. It does make a big difference. It does very much help. It's not 100% required. You can be a very effective product manager and I've seen it in iGaming, for example, where you don't specifically gamble. You've never gambled. You don't have necessarily a big interest in gambling, but you can still be pretty good. But it helps with the motivation for sure if you're into it.
Well, I'm asking because my experience tells me that being a product owner means a lot of decisions, micro and well macro decisions as well, and it's quite
Mhm.
easy to forget what the product is about. I mean, when you start talking about marketing and product management and development issues and all those little things, at some
Yeah.
point you realize that you basically forgot what you're working on.
I mean, that is a problem for sure, especially in complex environments where, you know, perhaps you can feel like a cog in a machine, and you're working on a corner of some larger solution of some sort. When you're especially more junior, that happens. Um, I think the product owners who progress, product managers, move on, head of product, they take a product track. Those people. Um, Usually are the ones who remember who they're doing it for.
Mm.
Um, they you serve your customer and you serve your company. And if you can kind of remember both of those and try your best to empathize with those positions and push forward both agendas where possible, then I think you'll be much more successful.
Is there anything that you wanna achieve? You as Tony, as a person, and you as a chief product officer. So, what motivates you now?
I've been around the block in iGaming, as you pointed out. Thank you. I'm getting old now. Um, I I have worked on all of the product verticals that you can probably think of. You know, sportsbook and casino and poker and lotteries and bingo and daily fantasy sports and all the primary ones at least. Um, and I've worked B2B and B2C and B2G and worked in various markets. So I've sort of done that a bit. More recently, what's been motivating me is a combination of two things. One is the fact that I organizationally am making a difference to people's lives within the organization. I'm creating an environment for product people to thrive, creating product-led organizations. That really sort of motivates me. It gives me great kind of reward, personal reward, to feel like I am helping somebody in their career path and kind of passing along what I've learned. And then on the product end of things, because I'm a product guy still, I'm people oriented for sure, but I'm a product guy. I am very much interested in finding opportunities to do things a little bit differently. Excuse me. When I joined Casumo, for example, I said in an interview, look, if you want somebody to, work on just another casino, then you can find somebody else for this role who's probably cheaper than me, to take on that challenge. No problem, but it's not going to be for me. But if you are really willing to embrace, um, let's try and do something different. Let's really offer some betting entertainment that's not out there at the moment in a relatively homogenous industry, then, and you're willing to take a chance on that because that might go wrong, then I'm up for that challenge. And obviously they said yes because I took the challenge. So yeah.
All right, but let's talk details because when you
Mm-hmm.
said product-led organization, that could mean anything.
Mm.
I mean, that could every single company could say that, hey, we do products, we are product oriented. So what exactly does it mean?
Sure. It's interpreted different ways for sure in different organizations. For me, excuse me, it's an organization where, at least on the product end of things, management asks the product organization, what should we do next? And the product organization has the capability and the credibility to be able to answer sensibly. And they're able to justify their answer in a way that satisfies the sanity checks that happen from a senior level. Um, Rather than being a top-down, this is what we're going to do organization, I try and create a product-led organization where we kind of decentralize that question a little bit. Now, in practice, of course, there's a top-down, usually top-down strategy, but the strategy is different from, how do we get there? And so, yeah, I think although product contribute to overall strategy for sure, I think the product-led element that I am speaking about, at least when I say product-led, is fundamentally that switch between telling a product organization this is what we're doing and asking a product organization what do you think we should do and why.
Again, in details, for instance, looking at my own organization, if I'm going to go to a developer and ask, for instance, the next platform we're going to do, which technology you think we should use, he would always give me the latest framework, the top notch thing that he would like to learn, or, he read somewhere online that is the best at the moment. If you're going to go to UX guy or UI guy, he's probably you're gonna tell you some things which are very interesting to him, but not really good for the organization. So
Mhm.
where is this line? How do you decide where to go as a team?
Yeah, sure, it's a good question. I think, first of all, importantly, the strategy and objectives of the company, those I do believe are usually best, not entirely top down, but mostly top down.
Mhm.
Setting the where the goalposts are. That's super important for everybody in the organization to be shooting goals in the same direction, essentially. Once you set, this is our strategy, and by that I mean this is how we intend to win against the competition. This is how we position ourselves to win against the competition. Once you set that, then you can ask in the various um, problem spaces. Hey, look, how do you first of all find problems that are aligned with our strategy, and second of all, are moving the metrics that we've associated with achieving our strategy? Those two elements combined allow problem spaces or product domains, which are usually cross-functional. They allow them to autonomously find valuable problems to solve that are aligned with the strategy and that are prioritized by value. And when you take an organization, when you empower an organization to do that and you create that capability, then it can be really powerful, especially when they're all aligned around the same objectives, shooting for the same goal, as I say.
Let me rephrase it. So, as you approach it, this strategy goes top down. Where do metrics come from? Does it come from the board, or does it come from the teams?
When you say the board, so the C level, the management of the
Yeah.
company, yeah. Fundamentally, every organization starts with we need to make more money because that's the goal of any organization, the raison d'être.
Yeah. Well, you
And
said it.
then yeah, and then I mean it is. There's no point in saying anything else. I mean that's the reason for it to exist. I'm sure there are values associated with how we get there, but the point is make money usually, 99% of the time, at least in my experience in iGaming. Um,
Same for me. Yeah.
I think yeah, I think once a management team starts to break down, okay, how do we make more money? Then they look at, okay, what sort of weaponry do we have? What sort of competitors are we moving against? What's our battlefield? Okay, who are our customers? And then they would look for chinks in the kind of competitor's armor more often than not. For example, these customers in this market have this need and it's not being served optimally or it's not being served at all. And we feel that positioning ourselves as the solution to that problem as a strategy overall is a path to victory. Now, that then needs to be broken down through an organization through usually a tree of objectives. I mean, OKRs, KPIs, the framework is less important than the fact that everybody in the organization needs to be able to track their work back to contributing to a company-wide metric of some sort. Uh, and I think that's kind of the key to success there, if that makes sense.
It does, but I'm trying to catch the moment where the decision is taken. So you mentioned, okay, there are various markets, there are various niches on a market.
Mm,
And at some point, you need to take the decision that you are going to aim that particular vertical on that particular market. And
mm.
what I'm trying to ask is that, do you take that decision based on, well, essentially, is it just intuition, or is it data backed, or
No, yeah, so not just intuition, no, for sure. So, I mean, I would perform, usually a research function falls to a combination of marketing and product, right? So, and it's often been my remit. And you would perform research to identify hypotheses about any given market. You would do primary research and secondary research. Primary being usually going and talking to customers, understanding them, coming up with some hypotheses around where they're not being served well in some way. Um, and then you would validate that quantitatively through survey or other means. Excuse me, and you'd identify, a problem that isn't being solved in that market. Then you would match those problems to your company's distinctive competencies. If there's a problem in the market, oh, we don't have enough green shoes, but you're not a shoemaker, it's not a good opportunity for you. But if there's a problem in the market, which is, hey, look, sports books are too complicated for us. We'd like to place bets simply, but we walk in and it's a big spreadsheet of doom, and I don't understand it, so I walk away from that. Virtually speaking. Then and we offer sports betting, then hey, wait a minute, this might be an opportunity for us to solve that problem in that market, and we could position ourselves as a casual punter's sportsbook, which is low bar to entry and educational material, and you can start to make good decisions around that strategic positioning in that market, and that's fundamentally how it's done. Uh, that's informed by research, usually by product and marketing. Because your brand position or existing any brand position can make a big difference to how something is perceived, as well as your product offering. Obviously, your product market fit. If you don't offer sportsbook, it doesn't make sense to try and solve sports problems. To use a ridiculous example, but you know what I'm saying. And I think, yeah. So that decision is made, at least informed by research, um, commercial research, product research, market research, looking at competitors, looking at customers, understanding data where it exists, looking at secondary research, any existing reports, for example, trends. Oh, that market over there is heavily regulated, and you're very good at solving regulations, so that perhaps is a better opportunity for you. It's a complex decision, to be fair. We should go into this market and lean into this product vertical and lean into this positioning for that product vertical. Um, but but yeah, all of those inputs and a few more are used to make that decision. And usually that decision is made relatively high level, although inputs are gathered from throughout an organization.
How about timing and all that? Because, I'm a type of the person that I have like thousand ideas a second. And,
Mm.
even if I do some research and I'm like pretty sure that going to some direction is a good idea, a week later, I'm already bored with it and I want to try something else. And I know it's not good. And the organization I have behind me, keeps me on the right track. So that's fine. But, you don't really set up the new directions every quarter or every year. So do you have like is it a defined pattern that you follow, or is it depending on the situation of the market?
It's a little bit case by case, but broadly speaking, I mean, it's a good point that you're raising. And actually, it's often been my experience that I've had to defend from context switching,
Mm.
essentially, from various senior stakeholders, be they owners or funding or CEO or otherwise, where the flavor of the month can come up. And for a product led organization where doing anything non trivial takes some significant time, you can't be at the whims of somebody's changing mind. You can't be to really solve those problems. So important that a strategy is chosen not based on an idea for a solution. Like I guess you might have implied a while ago when you said, I
Mm-mm.
have an idea to solve this problem early, and then next week I've got a different idea to solve a different problem. So that's not a strategy. That's an execution plan that you're changing. And that can change, in the shorter term. But the strategy itself should not change. Hey, look, we want to lean into regulated markets because we have an organization that responds well to that. And we believe that's the future for iGaming, for example. Um, that strategy holds no matter what solutions you're putting in place. We could go into that regulated market or that regulated market. We could choose to lean heavily into the markets we're in. We could choose to go above and beyond on regulation and position ourselves thusly, but the strategy holds. So the general direction shouldn't be at the whims of the winds. Um, the you can get the execution wrong and fail and then move forward, but still in the same direction. But you don't change the strategy. I guess that's my answer there. Yeah.
And it does answer the question. So how do you define, or do you define at all, whenever the execution failed or not? So, for instance, I can imagine that you do some plans that after a year we're going to have sales on a particular level, whatever. But how many metrics do you set up, and do you really tightly hold to them, or not quite?
Yes, and about 100% of the time. I say that, yeah, with some good confidence. So on the product end of things, for anything non-trivial, I'm not talking about change that button on that page from green to blue, but for anything non-trivial, um, two key elements need to be in place before anything is even considered. One of them is a problem statement. What problem are we solving here, or what opportunity are we taking advantage of? And the other one is, what are the measures of success and how are we going to measure them? So, why bother doing it, essentially? Without those two key elements being in place, then an idea doesn't get considered. Um, those two key elements need to be in place. And then, if you're a product manager, I would ensure that you go through a process around measurements of success, which is, as I mentioned, upstream, identifying them and working with stakeholders to put in place a target on any given metric. We think changing all the buttons from blue to green will drive engagement up, active player days, increase active player days by 5%, for example. And then you would perhaps, if you don't have any data for that, that's kind of not good enough for me. So I would ask you, hey, how can you get some leading data here? Okay, we'll do an experiment. We'll change one button on one page. We'll see how that goes. That change from blue to red. Well, that drove, engagement on that button by, or active player days in that area by up by 3%. That seems to be positive. That leads us in the right direction. We would use those metrics. And then the other bit that I would ask you to do is put in place a capability for measurement and then a measurement plan. So, how are we going to measure it? What report are we going to use? What data point? Where can we get this data from? If it doesn't exist, then part of the requirements needs to be to create that capability. And if it does exist, or if you've put in place the requirements, then when do we measure? Do we measure immediately, the day after? Do we measure after a week? Do we measure after a month? Do we measure in multiple points? And then when do we expect to reach the target? And that helps us with, return on investment and payback period and all those good commercial kind of numbers as well. Yeah.
Right, but I've been in such situations a number of times, and pretty often, whenever the metrics that shouted that, hey, I should stop doing it because I'm not meeting any expectations, or I'm meeting all the negative values that I set to myself, a year before, that if I'm going to reach that level, I should definitely stop doing it. But quite often at this point, the thinking is, oh my god, I invested so much time, I invested so much money into it, it's so hard, maybe let's give it another quarter, let's give it another whatever amount of money. So how do you handle these kind of situations on a I don't want to say personal level, it's not about it's on a human being level of being attached to what you've been doing for such a long time.
Yeah, I think so. You're talking about a sunk cost and the sort of feeling of that sunk cost as
Mm.
well, not just the actual sunk cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Well, the main way that I would say to combat that situation is, before you move into any level of development, when you're identifying your targets and thresholds, like you've just rightly pointed out, then you would contingency plan. And those contingency plans also become part of the go to market plan. So, um, for example, try and avoid situations where you have a long period of no data and then a big bang, and then, oh, look, it didn't do what we expected it to do. Try and take steps towards that, milestones towards that, to allow you to make decisions earlier. If metric X, low threshold, is not met, then contingency plan is as follows, and people agree on that. So then you would have to make a very good, strong case to overcome the contingency plan that you put in place for your own product.
Mhm.
So it would be rare that that would be overcome. So contingency planning before you're attached to it allows you to detach from that emotional decision, as well as a combination of sort of iterative drops in anything complex and that takes a long time. So yeah, I mean, it allows you to make decisions, reassess, pivot. The contingency plans aren't just abandon,
Mhm.
but they need to be in place early because then you're not attached to it in the same way.
All right, we've been talking about very high level strategy, purely managerial, purely management type of the things. But your story and your education is, it's not that you've been parachuted into managerial position. You've been climbing up the ladder, and you started as a software developer. So you started with a purely operational type of the position in a company, and then you switched to where you are now. So after all those years, and I'm not saying you're old, but you have like a lot of experience. So if you were to sum up those all those years and all those learnings and all those things that you witnessed, would you be able to share with us a couple of what I call aha moments, that the biggest lessons that you had, the biggest learnings, the few things that just opened your eyes and made you really understand better?
I guess two things spring to mind when you ask that. The first one is sort of a leadership aha moment. I think essentially that first step from individual contributor to some level of leadership, people can get to through hard work. Frankly, you can make that step usually through hard work. Work hard, be diligent, do a good job. Then you become in contention for that first step. But when you take that step, all of those things that got you there, at least in my experience, become not so important in your role. And and I guess a lot of people understand that leadership is different from individual contribution. The skill set is different. Everybody kind of understands that, and I understood that having seen it or perhaps read about it. And when I made the step, what I didn't realize, I was attempting then to show others how to do things and kind of distribute my knowledge as a new leader. And I had a kind of an aha moment along the way when I realized I don't need everybody to do things like me. This made a big difference in my ability to get things done and to help others get things done. People can reach their goals in their own way, and people can do things differently to you and still reach those goals. If you try and make everybody like you, one, they're not going to be naturally, they're not going to like you for it. I can tell you from experience. Um, and two, they're not going to be as good at it at being you as you. So you're going to sort of devalue them in some way, or subconsciously at least. Um, so finding people's strengths and people's superpowers and leaning into those really made a big difference to my ability to lead people. Understanding their motivation as individuals and then leaning into that, that was a really big aha moment for me as a kind of a new leader. It allowed me to be respected and credible, and to be able to work with all types of different people. It was a big aha moment for me. And once I realized it, I I then started to create a kind of a mental framework where I would give people clear objectives, and then I would give them. I learned soon afterwards to put in place some guardrails around their approach, metric based guardrails or otherwise, but essentially do what you like, but don't break this and this. And that sort of really empowers people, makes a big difference. And then I can take that leadership style suits me well, where I can kind of help them and coach them and move them along in a way that is a bit more servant leader than sort of dictatorial. And I found that to be super effective, especially in people in the product track who are usually generalists who want some level of accountability. Yeah,
But
that was
this
a big one for me.
But setting up this what you call mental framework,
Mm.
it's if I understand you correctly, it's not about telling people how to do the things. It's more about defining the outcome of the work. But I can imagine. Since people are working so differently and people are putting stress on the different aspects of what they need to do, uh, it could be quite difficult. I mean, it is quite difficult to properly set up the points. Let's call them the checkpoints. Like, are you progressing the right direction? Are you
Mhm.
achieving what we want to achieve? I mean, it's very simple when we talk about it. You know, increase the production rate. Produce bigger number of higher number of lines of code or whatever. It's
Mhm.
it's easy to talk about it, but when it comes to reality, um, good luck with that.
Well, no, I hear you on that. And look, part of my role as a product leader is to help product individual contributors to hedge their bets a little bit, to lean into, part of their decisions and roadmap being based around sort of very strong bets, and part of them being based around less strong bets, for example, where you have, hey, I did this in that market and it crushed. That's a pretty strong bet to do it in this other market, for example. Hey, I've seen the competitor do that and they're crushing with it. That's a good strong bet. And excuse me, um, it's a good idea to have a diverse sort of roadmap and portfolio where you dedicate depending on the company's needs, a percentage of your roadmap towards strong bets, and then a percentage towards perhaps less strong bets with higher reward but also higher risk. And so, uh, yes, you're right. It can be difficult to set that up, but in theory it's difficult to set it up, but in practice, actually, when you get into a problem space, people understand their problem spaces reasonably well. They understand we've got a gap here, we have an opportunity here. I've spoken to customers. This looks like a problem to solve. It starts to fall into place, and then you can help them with the balance, if you will, so that they don't end up in a situation where they're out on a limb and they're getting nowhere near their metric and they feel like they're failing.
All right, and where is the formal education in all that? I mean, I can imagine that when you changed the type of the work that you were doing, back a couple of years ago, um, you probably had this feeling that, oh my God, this enormous number of frameworks or theories that I should know now, how to manage people, how to deliver, how to do this, how to do that. So what was your way? Did you start learning all those, or did you trust your intuition, or how did you do it?
A combination. In all honesty, in product management, there isn't any de facto standard for this is how to do it. Excuse me. There are some, reasonable accreditations out there. I won't mention, um, but there isn't a, here's a degree in product management. Here is a well-established basis in product management. Um, I found it to be a combination of leaning into well-established marketing processes and frameworks, as well as leadership, processes and frameworks and approaches, um, as well as um, really understanding people. I found it to be the most valuable thing I could do. I didn't have, well, I mean, recently, more recently, 2 years ago now, I think, I graduated from an MBA. So I did end up doing some more formal, I guess, you know, mm, education aimed at leadership. The MBA was aimed at that. But before that, I was leading long before that. And I didn't find there to be great formal education. And starting my career as an engineer, I lean into the science of something before I lean into the art of something. And so I did look for this, and I did do courses and get certified and go through the hoops. But although useful, essentially it was teaching me to suck eggs a little bit. I really um, I really leaned into, I have confidence in my own ability to take reasonable inputs and make a reasonable decision under almost any circumstances. I have confidence in my ability to communicate concerns, risks. I have confidence in my ability to try and help people as best I can honestly, to act authentically when I'm dealing with people and give them my honest self. And so that really helped me to manage up and manage down. And when I was managing up, creating relationships made a big difference to my learning, learning from experience, good and bad, learning from watching people how to do X and Y or how not to do X and Y because it didn't go so well. Um, this made the biggest difference. I understand that might not be a fast track solution to anybody listening, but I don't think there is a fast track solution, at least in my experience. I think it takes you time to figure it out for yourself and also to lean into your own strengths. I have some strengths. I leaned into those as best I could, and I ended up hiring and still do hire to my weaknesses and point and sort of knowing myself and my weaknesses. That also was super helpful for me. Acknowledging them, clearly, not necessarily always talking about your weaknesses, but acknowledging them, understanding them, and then finding a way to deal with them allowed me to make better decisions, allowed me to be a better leader. Those were the sort of key learnings and approach to learning that I took along the way, rather than here's a course on how to be a good
Mhm.
product leader or whatever. Yeah.
Mhm. And you mentioned I would call all that hard skills. I'm good at this. I'm not so good at that. So I'm gonna delegate this and all that. But how about your head? Did you have those moments where you felt like, I don't know, lonely, where you felt that, oh my god, that team is pushing that direction, those people are pulling into the other direction. Oh my god, it's not going to work out, and I'm in the middle of that, and I'm losing control. Did you have these kind of situations?
Yes, yes, especially before I realized that it's a bunch of people and I should get them together and talk, and outline the situation and agree how to move forward. Before I kind of realized that, when I thought I had to solve all the problems myself and sort of felt like I was being dragged around, and I would be diligently searching for solutions for things that were, contravening each other, and I, couldn't find, it's a very complex scenarios. I couldn't find solutions. Yes, I felt that way. Um, and there, once again, I leaned into one of my strengths, I feel, which is just the ability to build relationships with people. And I said to peers and managers, more so than anybody else, I'm stuck here. I'm not sure how to progress. And more experienced managers, more often than not, would say, don't worry, just get people together, outline the problem, and let's agree how to move forward. They would say something extremely simple, annoyingly simple like that. And you don't think that way when you're stuck in the I need to solve all the problems myself. So yeah, I absolutely experienced that. But I mean, around you is just a bunch of people, not some sort of, perfect robots that do everything perfect, and you're the only one who's lost in a sea of this. It's not the case. It's just a bunch of people trying to get by as well. So, outlining that in a reasonable way, not a scared or trepidatious way, but just, hey, look, this is the situation I'm in. These are my inputs. I'm not sure how to proceed. How do you think I should do that? Perfectly reasonable question. And in fact, in my experience, a mark of seniority when people start to do that.
That's that was for me one of the biggest aha moments, that it's nothing wrong to say that you don't know, that showing your weakness, even if you are a founder, manager, senior manager, to come to the people and say that, hey, I don't know what to do, help me. You don't have to, you're not a superman, you don't have to have all the answers, you don't have to be the smartest guy in the world. It's okay to ask for the opinion, to ask for help, and yeah, and to admit that you have some weaknesses, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've met, especially founders, very driven founders and owners of companies who don't take this approach. They take I'm going to make a decision because a decision needs to be made, sort of approach.
Mhm.
And on one level, I can respect that view because it's their baby usually, and they want to push forward, and sometimes that does yield results. But if you're in a managerial position of responsibility within an organization, which more people are than are owners of large companies, then taking that care around, hey, I need to consider this more. I need to have at least done some due diligence around what inputs I should take. I should consider these inputs, and then I can make a logical decision, at least within the time constraints that I have. That's your responsibility, and you're accountable for doing that. Differently to if you're an owner and you're trying to, power through a difficult situation. So, yeah, your approach can be different. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, change of topic. My favorite one, buzzwords. I'm pretty often visiting all those conferences, all those trade shows, all that. And you could clearly see, the leading buzzword on every single and one of them, like data-driven, AI. AI is everywhere right now. Everything and everybody is AI driven. A couple of years ago there was blockchain. You would put blockchain to basically everything and everywhere. How many of those groundbreaking top-notch technologies and techniques and whatnot are you really using at work?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
really
mean,
using.
yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. It's a good question. I think, look, there are trends that are ubiquitous, like AI. Um, and when you say AI, yes, you're right, it's a buzzword, but when you talk about a use of AI, it's a little bit different. And there are well established in iGaming, you know, mm, pretty strong use cases for AI. I mean, recommendation engine type AI, for example. Um, that's pretty standard these days. And in product, because of the nature of the role, we have to look outward and forward quite a bit. Because outward, we have to make decisions around what are the good problems to solve, like I mentioned earlier. But also forward quite a bit, because I also mentioned it usually takes us quite a while to, affect significant change, to develop something that's a solution to a complex problem, for example, or to integrate with a partner, or to buy something that does that and then make use of it. So in product, I would say even more so than in marketing, because marketing is usually more shorter term driven, because they can be more operational, they can turn faster. In product, you sort of have to keep an eye on trends. And so, as cheesy as it sounds, keeping your finger on the pulse of those trends is a kind of a prerequisite, especially in product leadership, um, and not losing touch with that. I mean, yes, AI is a buzzword, but also AI in certain use cases is well established now. Um, Being data driven, you mentioned, yeah. Um, I, I mean, I ask product leaders, as I mentioned, to present validated hypotheses all the time, and to do that, I ask them to, either have researched or generate data to demonstrate their validation of their hypotheses. And so, yeah, I do say things like data driven a lot. I perhaps don't realize I'm buzzwording when I do. But yeah, I mean, certain, I guess what would be termed as buzzwords we use all the time. Um, others, others not so much. I mean, you know, I don't know, crypto or whatever kind of. And it depends on your industry. You would use that all the time in other industries. I had previous roles where I was developing crypto wallets. Then, we had NFT based avatars. There's a beautiful pointless solution to a problem that doesn't really exist, right? So, I saw that as, okay, we're buzzwording here, but actually we understood we were, and we took a took a marketing approach to that, if you will.
Mhm.
Yeah, some of them get used, and in product, possibly too many, but yeah.
Mhm. But just to make it clear, I'm not saying that using AI and taking data-driven decisions, or even using crypto, that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that. Uh,
Mm,
what I'm saying is that there are people that they would use the word AI, or they would use the phrase data-driven like 10 times in a single sentence, and you could get a feeling that they don't really wake up before taking data-driven decision if they should really wake up, if you know what I'm saying. So it's all about finding the right the right amount of time invested into learning. What can you really get? And it's all about getting the real benefit of using it rather than just talking about benefits that don't really exist.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you is, let's take AI because that's the freshest thing on the market. And don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, it's huge. Uh, but how do you tackle it? I mean,
Yeah.
okay, at some point you probably saw ChatGPT and you were like amazed because everybody was amazed by it. Okay,
Hmm.
what's your next step? What do you do as a manager?
Yeah. Well, what I did um, in at least two cases, and what we're doing here to some degree, I'm doing it here more collaboratively, but what I did in at least two cases where I was a product leader was I identified a trend that may have been useful to the company, such as AI, pretty broad trend. In this case, it was AI, in
Yeah.
both cases, actually. Um, and I then asked each problem space or product domain, hey, look, I want you to look into your use cases, your problems that you really have to solve, and your opportunities that you've identified. And I want you to um, look at solutions that may leverage this new trend because it may be useful to you. And then I would time box their diligence on this area on purpose so that they didn't just go down rabbit holes and never come back.
Mhm.
Um, and after that, each product domain would come with, well, I can't see any use case over here for me. There are some tools, but they're too expensive or dot, dot, dot. They would come back with a report. And then another domain would come back with, oh, look, I think actually there's a tool here that might be useful for us. And then the head of product would come back and say, look, actually our product lifecycle includes these deliverables, and I think we can shortcut that with ChatGPT, for example. Um, and then I would create uh, uh, an initiative around that, and we would prioritize the same way as we prioritize anything else. Essentially, it would just be, hey, look, we don't want to be behind the curve, for sure not, but we don't want to spend all our life looking at the future that will never get anything done. So here's a trend, it's been identified, it's a clear trend that may be of benefit to us. Here's a time box, check it out and tell me what we can do with it in your problem space based on your real problems rather than inventing them to solve, if you know what I mean. So, yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
that's how I approached it, if that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely does. Is it a repeatable process for you? So, I mean, you did this.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah,
all right. So you do.
yeah, it is absolutely. I think, yeah, I did it in two companies at least that spring to mind. Excuse me. And it was both of them were, it was about AI actually, and I think the process is very repeatable around any trend or innovation in almost any sector, where uh, it's your job as a product leader to keep your eye on these trends, as I mentioned, and then where you identify something that you think, okay, this feels like it could be a match for us. I can contrive in this area some use cases where it could be useful, for example, just hypothesize, then you introduce it into your analysis and design phase, and you set aside some time for a bit of research, and you time box it, and then you come back from you get feedback in a product-led organization. You get feedback from capable product domains that are usually cross-functional, as I mentioned. You get feedback from them, which is, hey, we looked into this, our data guy checked it out, our engineer checked it out, our product designer checked it out and saw where it could fit into our customer journeys, and the product manager put it all together and said, hey, I've got a recommendation. I think this could be a good way for us to solve this problem, which I've already validated. Yeah, it's a repeatable process,
Okay,
for me at least. Yeah.
all right, gotcha. Okay, let's talk about the market in general and how Casumo handles those market wide issues. So, for instance, player acquisition and player retention. Uh,
Mhm.
is there anything in particular that you think you do better than all the rest of the market? That you have some better insight, better ideas, better solutions how to improve all that?
Yeah, I mean that's quite a question, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think what I can say about acquisition and retention, yes, these are ubiquitous activities in across iGaming, and across e-commerce and commerce in general.
Mm.
Um, what I can speak to is not necessarily, hey, look, we do this so much better than somebody else. That's something that if we did, I probably wouldn't want to talk about anyway. Um,
Right.
but but what I can say on this topic is it's most important. Where I've seen this not be effective is where acquisition and retention were not aligned. This is what I feel is the key to success. Almost more important than what type of players or customers you try and acquire and retain is aligning around the same type of customers that you try and acquire and retain, because then your marketing organization delivers a message that appeals to the type of customer that you want to acquire, and then your product and operations organization deliver solutions that uh, the customer expects and really wants, because they're required, because they want that, because they are like that. I've seen multiple times, and I've been guilty of it myself, kind of operating a bit more siloed. And I've seen organizations do a great job at acquisition, and then throw stones at each other for, this isn't working very well. I'm acquiring all of these players, but you're not doing anything with them. They're not staying, they're churning. Or, hey, I'm retaining all these players, but all the new players are dropping off immediately. What are you doing? And that sort of back and forth. And actually, I've found a common cause of that is a lack of alignment around, this is the clear picture of who we want to acquire and retain, and these are the key attributes of those potential or real customers. That's fundamental to success, in my opinion. Yeah.
So it sounds like pretty similar to what you said a couple of minutes ago about being the manager. That there are no golden rules. There are no, five tricks to become a best manager overnight. It's just a series of small little steps that you take every day, and the same happens here, right? It's
Yeah, I think so. Look, I mean, if there was a formula for guaranteed acquisition and retention success, then everybody would just employ it,
hmm,
because it's a complex problem or series of problems, and your environment, your market, your brand, your product offering, your customers, your competition, the trends, the zeitgeist in the market you're in, all of these things make a big difference. And so it's complex. It's an art as well as a science. Then just saying, here's the one, two, three to perfect acquisition and retention doesn't really exist, in my opinion.
mhm.
As I say, if it did, I think everybody would do it. Yeah.
All right. But would you rather say that it's all about not making mistakes rather than introducing some innovative solutions?
No, I think so. That's a strategy question. If your position is, we're a dependable solution, then it's more about not making mistakes. If your strategic position is, come here to get something you don't get anywhere else, then you have to lean. Of course, there's a low threshold for not making mistakes, but usually you'll lean more into your innovation end of things, your unique selling points or unique value proposition in some way, because that's what you set yourself out to be. And customers who come for that can be more forgiving of some other mistakes, because, in fact, this is the only place I can go to get that thing that I like.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I keep answering you with it depends. I'm sorry, but it depends.
No, that's an absolutely valid answer. Um, all right, so easier question right now. Uh, the next big thing on the market. I mean, uh, yeah.
I mean, look, I have a view on this. I have a view, uh, but it's just my view, and take it for what it's worth.
That's the
Before I joined Casumo, I was consulting for a while. I analyzed did primary research into multiple markets for multiple clients as a consultant, um, and I found some ubiquitous unmet needs. And this isn't going to be revelatory for anybody in the industry, I think, if you've been looking into this in some way, but it hasn't been cracked, in my opinion. I found that people are self-organizing around their betting entertainment. They're organizing themselves to get together and enjoy moments of winning and losing and real money betting together, the thrill, whether they win or lose, they do it together and they get that currency, that social currency from doing that together. And I don't think that the gambling operators and gaming operators are serving this need really. I think they're self-organized. I see people using WhatsApp groups. I see people using, just getting together in person and doing things around betting entertainment together by exchanging money with each other. And I see all sorts of, I saw all sorts of this kind of activity. People in doing group pulls on slot machines with influencers, all kinds of things, and they're getting together for this, and they're not getting together because they're always winning money. I mean, the nature of the business is overall, they spend money, they don't get it all back. Yes, there is a roller coaster and some thrills involved, and that's fun, but overall, gambling operators aren't in the business of giving out money. So what they're getting from it is that sort of, bonding and shared experience. And I think the next big thing, as you asked me, in gambling is creating a social betting entertainment solution that serves this need in a way that currently isn't on the market. Yeah.
All right. Where is AI, data driven crypto, and blockchain in it? I don't get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I guess I'm a people-oriented guy, and I understand you're being facetious, but I think none of that really matters in this situation. Just find a way to give people what they're trying to get themselves, and I think that will make a big difference. And yeah, I think if you can do that, you'll disrupt a little bit. And I think now that you know a bit about the way I think, then watch this space on Casumo. Yeah.
Ah, did you just reveal some parts of a strategy?
I mean, I didn't reveal any gaps in the market that aren't well known, but how we solve them perhaps is an interesting challenge. And yeah,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, when I joined Casumo, I didn't join to do the same as everybody else. So yeah, let's see what we can shake up. There's a reasonable chance of failure, but if it was easy, everyone would do it,
Of
right?
course, yeah. Are there any timeframes on that?
Yes, there are.
Are they public? I guess not.
But I am unwilling to commit on a podcast.
Gotcha. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we have a cliffhanger here. So let's watch Casumo. Let's watch Tony Omani. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we'll be watching you.
Thanks so much. That sounds a little creepy, but I do like it. Thank
That's the point. Thank you. Have a nice day.